And hello and greetings in the name of our Lord and our Savior, Jesus Christ. Once again, it's our joy to have you with us as we continue our study of revealing the truth about the Quran. Today, we will continue our study by looking at the Quran and the Bible. In our last program, we ended with this information. As we see, Muslims claim that the Quran is the perfect word of Allah. As a matter of fact, they believe that's what has been revealed to Muhammad, the Prophet of Islam. And they stated on reading the Quran, one is at once convinced that it is the word of Allah. For no man can write such perfect guidance on so many subjects. Yes, I know that Muhammad spoke about many subjects in the Quran. I know that he talked about creation, Adam and Eve, Noah, Abraham, and all the stories which we are very familiar in the Bible. He put it in the Quran. But here is a question. Is it true if a man or a woman read the Quran once or 1,000 times, will they come really to believe that the Quran is the perfect word of Allah? Well, let me ask a question. How big is the Quran? Let's move to this next piece. It's very important to know that the Quran is not this huge book as Muslims claim. I would like to compare the Quran to the Bible concerning the verses. How many verses in the Bible and how many verses in the Quran? You will see that the Quran is actually 20% the size of the Bible. And you may ask yourself, wow, 20%, that's a huge book. No, it's not. Because many of the verses of the Quran is simply a word or two. No kidding. There's verses in the Quran, just a bunch of letters stick together to make a word, and no one knows what these words really mean. So it's not because it's 20%, that means that is 1/5 of the Bible. No, it's actually a lot smaller than that. And that's what we see when we compare the number of words in the Quran to the number of the words in the Bible. As you see on the screen, now the Quran shrank from 20% to 13%. And you may think, well, still the big size. No, as I said earlier, many of the words of the Quran is just simple words with a few letters from the Arabic language. Now I'm moving on one more step. We're going to be a little closer to see the actual chapters, number of chapters in the Quran compared to the number of chapters in the Bible. Once again, we see from the Bible there is 1,189 chapters, but the Quran have 114 chapters. That is if you are a Sunni, because the Shia have extra 2 chapters the Sunni do not believe in. So now the Quran shrink to 10%. How about the actual size? I'm talking about every letter, the ABC in the Quran and ABC in the Bible. What is the comparison between the Bible and the Quran? And that's what we see in the bottom here. That is actually now the Quran is shrinking to be 9.1. It's actually less than 9.1. We say roughly 9%. Now, if you look with me at the Quran and to see really the information of the Quran. I'm not talking about now chapters and words and verses. I'm talking about the information of the Quran when I compare it to the information of the Bible. You'll be surprised. Like the Quran, in this case, will shrink to roughly around 3%. I maybe go for 3.5%. So if you read the entire Quran right now, it would take you 24 hours to read the whole book. But if you remove all the repeated story out of the Quran, you will be surprised that now it is shrinking actually to be less than 3.5%. You can read the entire Quran roughly in 8 hours. So the Quran is not really this huge book. And it took Muhammad literally 23 years to put this Quran together. Muslim will tell you Muhammad did not write anything. Yes, I understand that. But Muhammad used to receive this revelation from his angel, and then he will give it to his followers, who will write it down in some piece of fabric or some different pieces of material, and many of them memorize many portions of the Quran. So they like this habit at the time, people memorize poetry, and Muslims memorize some of the verses of the Quran. Now the condition how Muhammad used to receive the Quran is really a problem. Why is that? You see, Muhammad, every time he claimed to have this revelation, he used to have what we call like a seizure. Actually, he used to faint, fall on the ground, and he have this his body will be shaking so hard, he will be sweating, he will be foaming from his mouth, and he will be grunting his teeth, and he will really have this severe, loud voice of like church ring bells in his ear. It's a very dramatic time for Muhammad every time he receives this revelation. And his followers will be covering him with some fabrics, and then an hour later or whatever, when the spirit leave Muhammad, then they uncover him, and that's when Muhammad become back to his norm, and then he starts sharing whatever verses he received at this time from his angel, and then he will start sharing these verses with his followers, and he will ask them to add it to any part of the Quran here or there, and people start memorizing, and on. This going on with the rest of the Quran. Is this really a good description for a prophet? How many prophets do we know in the Bible? Job or Moses or Ezekiel or Jeremiah or any of the writing of the New Testament, David or anybody. How many of these people have the same condition? We never hear about David falling on the ground, foaming from his mouth, having a seizure, and then he gave us one of the book of Psalms chapters or any of the writings of any other prophets throughout the Bible. This description, my dear friends, the description of Muhammad, whenever he receives this revelation, remind us of many stories of many of demon-possessed people in the Bible. If you look carefully in the scripture, you see that one time a father brought his son to the disciples of Jesus, and he said, will you pray over my son and heal him, because he's hurting himself so much. And he is exactly the description of Muhammad. He used to fall, throw himself in the fire, try to hurt himself, and he has this seizure. And the disciples of Jesus could not heal this man. Jesus came down from the mountain and he cast these demons out of this man. And in reality, as we see in the Middle East, many of the people who are demon-possessed, they exactly fall in the same categories what Muhammad used to go through every time Muhammad received this claimed revelation from the Quran. So, can the Quran be the Word of God when we compare it to the Bible and those who wrote to us the Bible as they were inspired by the Holy Spirit? The answer is no. Not one of all the 40 men who were led by the Holy Spirit to write the Bible have been in the situation where Muhammad have been, as he claimed to receive the verses, the revelation of the Quran in this 20 some years in his life. Once again, let's look at the screen together. The Quran supposed to be the revelation to Muhammad from the angel Gabriel. And the Hadith is the second most holy book to the Muslims. As we read here, is a collection of the saying and the sunnah of Muhammad that were gathered after his death, used to help clarify some of the verses of the Quran, and it tells us more about the action of Muhammad, what Muhammad did in his life. Now, in our presentation, as you may hear me, in our teaching as we hear me, we only quote to you what is written in Sahih Muslim, the correct hadith by Muslim, Sahih Bukhari, the correct hadith by Bukhari. Sometimes I use Riyadh al-Salihin, and the most famous one. But when we say the hadith, the saying of Muhammad, according to Sahih Muslim or according to Sahih Bukhari, are we talking about that in these two books we have all the saying of Muhammad? The answer is no. You know, the Sahih Muslim or Sahih Bukhari literally are 2% of the sayings of Muhammad. 2% about the things which Muhammad did. So we're literally missing from the hadith a good 98% of what Muhammad used to teach and what Muhammad used to do. The sunnah of Islam is the action of Muhammad, what Muhammad used to do. I know Muslim people are doing everything they can to live, to please Allah, to please Muhammad, and they copy Muhammad in everything. And when you talk to the Muslims in America, many of them will tell you, we don't believe in the hadith, we only believe in the Quran. But wait a minute, Allah in the Quran ordered the Muslim believers in 13 separate verses to obey Muhammad. Allah order every Muslim to obey Muhammad. But where is the teaching of Muhammad? Where is the words of Muhammad? Well, guess what? It's not in the Quran. We just have seen in the screen a minute ago that the Quran is the word of Allah, not the word of Muhammad. And the words of Muhammad can be found in the Hadith. And those who believe that they can be a Muslim without believing in the Hadith, I'm sorry, I have some bad news for you. You cannot be a Muslim unless you believe in the Quran and in the Hadith. What do I mean by that? You see, for a Muslim to be a Muslim, especially those on the West, you have to say the Shahada. And what is the Shahada? The first pillar in Islam. And you have to say it in Arabic. There is no God but Allah, and Muhammad is his messenger. Anyone and everyone who will say this once in Arabic, La ilaha illallah, ashhadu anna la ilaha illallah, ashhadu anna Muhammad Rasulullah, this person, by saying this statement in the Arabic language, become a Muslim. Now, where can we find in the Quran the teaching of Allah which said there is no God but Allah? I bear witness there is no God but Allah, and Muhammad is his messenger. Well, the sad news is it's not in the Quran. This actually can only be found in the Hadith. How about the prayer, the second pillar in Islam? Muslims pray 5 times a day, and if we open the Quran, will we find a verse Allah commands a Muslim to pray 5 times a day? The answer is no. There's not any verse in the Quran. As a matter of fact, the only times the Quran mentions about prayer, he mentions 3 prayers. The one you do in the morning, and the one you do at the end of the day, and the one in the middle. So why Muslim people pray 5 times a day, not just 3 as Allah states in the Quran? It's very simple. Because Muhammad in the Hadith taught the Muslim about many of the wonderful things he did in his life. One of them is his ascending to the 7 heavens, which by the way the Bible only teaches there is 3 heavens. The heaven of the birds, and the heaven of the stars, and the heaven of heavens where Christ is. But that's okay. Muslims believe 7 heavens, and Muhammad taught them in this hadith that when he arrived to the 7 heavens, Allah asked him to tell the Muslim people to worship and pray for him 50 times a day. And as Muhammad continued to travel between the 7th heaven and the 4th heaven, he met with Moses in the 4th heaven, and Moses advised him, oh, 50 is too much. No one will believe in you. Go back to Allah. And Muhammad go back to Allah. And when he went and met with Allah, Allah told him, okay, 45. Okay, 40. Okay, 35. And this count continued to go up to 5. And that's when Muhammad came back to earth, and he advised his followers, and he told them that Allah making them only pray 5 times a day. So where do we find about the 5 prayers? It's not in the Quran, it's in the Hadith. Therefore, Muslim must believe in the Quran and in the Hadith. And we ask the question, why? Why Muslims do not want to believe in the Hadith, especially those in the West? It's very simple. Because the Hadith is filled with many things, ungodly, unpleasant, weird, crazy. We know that from the Hadith that Muhammad was married to his favorite wife, Aisha, when she was 6 years old. And Muhammad have sexual relationship with her when she turned 9. Now the laws in the many of the Muslim world is simply a man can marry a child at any age. But as we seen in Iraq just recently, they passed the law as the law of the land that a man cannot be involved sexually with his wife until she turned 9. Why people do that? Because Muhammad did that. That is the sunnah of Muhammad. Muhammad have sexual relationship with his wife when she turned 9. And Muslim must do the same. Therefore, they can be married to little children at any age, even a baby 1 day old, but they cannot be involved with their wives until they turn to 9 years old. That is the Quran, and that's a Hadith, the word of Allah and the teaching of Muhammad. But there are plenty of ungodly Hadith, not the 2%, the correct, the clean one of Sahih Muslim or Sahih Bukhari, but there are plenty of other Hadith, the saying of Muhammad, very ungodly, and I will not be able to even to share it with you in this broadcast because that's a Christian network here. So this is a fact, and this is the truth about the Quran. This is a fact and the truth about the Hadith, and that's what Muslims believe. Now we ask the question, can really Muslim understand the Quran by reading the Quran? Can really Muslim have this perfect guidance as Muslims claim that in the Quran they can have all what they need to know about Allah and about the will of Allah in their life, and now they be living holy life? Can Muslim understand the Quran by simply reading the Quran? And that is what we'll be covering in our next broadcast. And until we meet again, may the true God of the Bible continue to bless you and yours.